Oh, sorry. I thought Thala was driving. I was waiting for the song.
Okay, I'm happy to drive then.
Then you start. Sorry, guys. What a mess.
It's fine,
Just
keep it
go.
in.
Just go.
Welcome to the Rugby Bits podcast. And as you can see, no one knows who's the fly half of this podcast today. That's not a metaphor for the Springboks. So today we're going to be discussing the Springboks Rugby Championship squad that will be traveling to Australia for the Rugby Championship. Is a Are you guys finished? Goodness, man.
Yeah, we are
You're having
finished.
two
We're just giving
two
people
naughty boys there.
a behind the scenes of what happens in the chaos of rugby. But see, you think someone wanted to play 10, but now we're all just playing hot potato here.
Like and Cooks. I mean, Thala always comes in as bomb squad, and now he's just like wants to start, but then he doesn't. It's so
Wow.
confusing.
I just want the record to show for our listeners that I did say, hey, I'm happy to drive it. There's just a few, yeah, I might have to leave earlier. Then it was, you're asking Cooks, and then it was Sean, and then it was a bit of a mess. So I want to take the kick for polls. And I think I'm someone where I'd point to the polls, and one of you guys is Money Lebok saying, nah, I'm kicking for touch.
All I'm saying is, I agreed for Thala to kick for Paul. Then some of the ball ended up in my hands when the ref blew the whistle. Like the ball was just in my hand. I was like, and everybody just looked at me. I was like, why is the ball in my hands?
You've always got to be ready. Like maybe there was a quick tap and it was on. Like, and now we didn't score because you weren't ready.
I'll take that.
Well, gents, anyway, we can start talking about the squad that's been released by the Springboks for the Rugby Championship. Um, Basically, I mean, there's quite a few things to go through. I don't think we actually decided before we recorded if we want to do it by position, if we want to do it on sort of the bigger changes. How do you want to go about this?
You're the boss.
You the boss, Thala. Run the show.
Goodness. Okay. So there's a 33-man squad that has been selected by Rassie Erasmus for the Rugby Championship. Maybe the best way is to do it position by position. So we'll start up front with the hookers. And basically, the big news there is that Jan Grobelaar has won his positional battle with Andre Gufento to be the third choice hooker for the squad. And Malcolm Marx is fit to travel to Australia. It's expected he'll be available for the second week, the second match between the Box and Australia in Perth. So, Cox, I'll start with you. I mean, in terms of Jan Grobelaar, there's a decent chance he plays some minutes in the first test, but yeah, it's great reward for the match that he had in Portugal, and he's making that third choice hooker position his own.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic reward for him. I think we talked about it in the pod on Monday that he had a fantastic game, and I mean, he's had a fantastic couple of years. And Tella, you mentioned, I think the Bulls fans have been crying for him to get an opportunity for the Springboks, and now obviously going there as the third choice. Obviously with Jan-Hendrik Wessels as well as covering prop and hooker, that's also someone who impressed as well to find himself on the tour to Australia. And I think obviously with Malcolm Marx, with him having that fractured tibia, so it's going to be a great opportunity for Johan Grobler. I mean, he's shown such great form. Has probably been the form hooker in South Africa domestically, and now to go against the next step and play against the Wallabies in the Rugby Championship is probably just reward. And yeah, I think he'll do great. And I think we see what he can offer. I mean, if you're losing Malcolm Marx, I just don't think if Marx isn't available, I think that Johan Grobler is a great replacement. I mean, he is good on the ground as well. He's a dynamic player. So, I mean, no one is Malcolm Marx, but I mean, if you don't have him available, there's not many players I'd want ahead of Johan Grobler in that position to try and replace Malcolm Marx.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about the similarities in how they play. Like, you don't lose that turnover threat with Grobler that you do maybe if you picked another type of hooker. So, yeah, that would be good, I think, for the selection for the first test that, when Grobler comes onto the field, that you don't lose that. Sean, I think let's move on to props. And probably the biggest surprise is the selection of Jan-Hendrik Wessels. And yeah, I was debating people on Twitter saying, I think it's better for him personally to play in the Curry Cup and to get the minutes there and to hopefully, push himself into selection for the Bulls rather than going on tour. I mean, yes, he'll be scrumming against obviously the best tight heads in the world, but that doesn't necessarily change his position in the Bull squad, and he might play maybe one of the rugby championship games if he's lucky, as opposed to being able to play in the competition for the next few weeks. So yeah, I'm wondering what your position on that is.
I'm actually, yeah, I think it's a good idea that he's there. So just so I'm clear, he's a prop and a hooker, and we as in South Africa reckon that he's got the ability to potentially play hooker at test level in an emergency. Is that kind of right?
I guess so. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, I think.
So he's
Look, in terms
okay.
of, I was just going to say, I mean, for the Bulls, he's played, mostly at the loose head. I think he's looked best at the loose head. At loose head,
Yeah.
he's played a bit of hooker, and he's been okay. I mean, obviously, he doesn't like throw and stuff every week, so it's a bit of an issue. And he's played a bit of tight head, and he hasn't looked that good at tight head. So he can play all three positions, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Sean, I'm sure you can play flank and wing and center at the same time too.
Correct. But I'll stay away from the forwards. So in terms of your theory, I totally see it. Like you want the guy to get game time, but then like I remember that Don Human, he's not a massive fan of scrum machines, so he is essentially going to be on tour with one of the, if not the best pack in the world, and he will be scrumming up live scrums against the big boys. So I'm actually for it. I think it's a good shout that he goes. He gets to travel, gets to do his own thing, and learn a little bit, see the environment, and also Don and Co can evaluate him, like doing the big stuff with the big boys. So I actually think it's a pretty fair shout. I quite like it.
Yeah, I'm just hoping that if he stays for the whole rugby championship and doesn't play any Curry Cup, and then we're sort of back in the position we were before of him being maybe third choice at loose end, third choice at hooker, and not playing, then we run into the same problem that the only time he's going to get game time and scrum against people is when he goes on Springbok camp.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a difficult situation. I mean, it's similar to what I think Irish fans have been complaining about, and we talked about it on Monday. Similar to what Irish fans have been complaining about with the likes of Frawley and some of the players that Farrell picks that are second or third choice for Leinster and are like getting game time for the national team. So it becomes a national interest versus the interest of the player versus the interest of the franchise as well. So yeah, it's a difficult thing now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's completely off topic. For a while now, like we kind of like whatever Rassie Erasmus and the management want to do, they must do because we trust them. Like, will that ever get tired? When does that kind of end? Like, are we waiting for something not to work, or what's the space? By no means wanting it to end, but it's quite an interesting thing. Like, so many decisions are made and things happen, and you kind of like, okay, cool. Well, we've just got to trust the process because we really believe in the process. And even if you don't wholeheartedly believe in the process, you've seen it work. So, yeah. But in this particular instant, I actually don't have an issue. If they've clearly picked up there's something about Jan-Hendrik Wessels that they're after or they like, then by all means, go for it. We're not thin in that position. It's not an emergency to get him in and playing. He could very well sit in the Springbok sort of squad and set up all through until November, and not get any real substantial minutes, which is okay. I have no problem with people being in the mix and being worked on and trained and set up and being made ready or confident or whatever the case may be. So I think it's a great shot to have him there. But obviously, I'm saying that with the idea that it's going to be a long-term working sort of prop for us.
Cooks, what do you think about that point that Sean makes about, okay, when does the trust run out?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, we know that Rassi is quite loyal to the guys, and there's a point where you go like, when does the trust run out? And listen, then at the end of the day, the goal is to get to 2027, and I think in all likelihood that we might not see all the core of 2023 make it back, and the players that we have coming through, and guys are hungry. So I don't think necessarily will be like the trust sort of goes away. It'll be it's a revolution of things, and I think that's what we potentially could be seeing soon. I think I have a feeling that we might see, like Rassi mentioned at the start of the season, that he will change things up. He will sort of give guys an opportunity, and then maybe we'll start seeing some of the experienced guys sort of falling away come come in of 2024 to 2025. I mean, look at Trevor Nyakane, and you know it's kind of hard for him because there's lots of Thomas Tutoy who's played unbelievable rugby this year, where sometimes you just miss out because the other guys is more in form, and doesn't mean that Trevor's out or the trust is gone. It's just someone else is knocking on the door, and the depth we have is incredible. So unfortunately, that might come at the expense of some experienced players, where necessarily, or even guys who are on the fringes, and that trust in inverted commas has run out.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and I guess it introduces us to the one of the big omissions to the squad. I mean, there were some expected omissions, the likes of Andre Kufenta, Pepsi Buthelezi, and such. But the omission of Trevor Nyakane, who has obviously been in the Springbok setup for years and has over 50 caps and has been great, obviously as a swing prop option as well, which is quite interesting. I mean, essentially, it looks like to me that he's been dropped four vessels, you can read it as, or maybe dropped for Thomas du Toit, possibly. Sean, I mean, you probably watch more top 14 than the rest of us here. Trevor last season I think wasn't great, but this season I think his form was not bad. He was playing most of the games for Racing. He was their starter, and he was coming pretty well. Yeah, it's an interesting call there, I think.
Yeah, and I think the big thing and the big conversation is who has taken his place, and that's probably the most important. On his form, I agree with you. He hasn't been great. He hasn't been poor. He's been there and thereabouts. The thing about Nyakane, I really, from an outsider, feel that he adds a lot of value in a squad. I'm pretty sure, like, he's on top of everything. I'm pretty sure he can hold his own at scrum time and all that. So it's quite interesting. Having said that, like, if ever you need him to come in, he is the kind of guy that can fly in and be available to play the following day or the day after. Like, he's got that in him, and there's that probably also makes the decision a little bit easier. One thing we must always remember is, like, the guys are not dropped and find out via the reports. The guys have management have conversations with them. They kind of know what's going on and all that sort of jazz. So, yeah, I don't think it's eye-opening as opposed to anything else. If you have a look at the bigger picture with the props and see what's going on, you're kind of like, okay, I can see what's happening and what the plan is. And we always know that Nyakane is there if we need him. So I don't think it's necessarily the worst shout.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see, obviously, over the course of the next few weeks and months, if this is temporary or permanent sort of selection call. And then finally, Cook's Gerasstian is now in that sort of top two, top three loose heads. I mean, Steven Kitsoff is coming back to training, so he'll obviously join the squad at some stage. But it's great from Gerasstian, and he took his opportunity in the last few tests to establish himself there.
I mean, he made himself a hero with that scrum against Ireland in that first test. I mean, I think that will live long in his. I'm surprised he doesn't have that pinned on top of his Instagram page or Steenekamp. That's what I would have with that scrum. But again, he's been the form domestically, the form prop. I mean, him and Ox. I mean, Ox obviously been playing at a high level, but Steenekamp since getting his cap last year, August, I mean, he's just gone from strength to strength and got an opportunity, and he was great again. And what I love about him as well, I mean, we speak about his scrumming, but his loose, his playing the loose has also been fantastic for the Bulls, and I think we'll see a lot more of that against Australia. And I think, if you are Joe Schmidt, and yes, their scrum was good against Wales, it's still a very, very tough task. I mean, you're dealing with Ox first, and then Steenekamp coming on. It's just it just feels like a conveyor belt of loose heads at the moment, and if you're the All Blacks, you're thinking, shit, Stephen Kitsov is coming back soon as well. So, which, for me, I think it's also fantastic. Talking about Stephen Kitsov, we spoke about it in the World Cup where in the latter stages of the World Cup, it did kind of seem that he was quite tired. So, yes, I'm glad that he's getting this break. Yes, I know it's through injury, but I just know when Kitsy does come back, he's going to be rearing and fighting. And now Kitsy comes back and he's thinking, oh, shit, now I've got another prop who's fighting for this jersey. So, again, I mean, our prop stocks and hooker stocks are as strong as they've been in the longest time. And for Steenekamp, I think he's going to want to make that 17 jersey, and obviously looking to make the number 1 jersey his own. And just very happy for him. And like I said, if you are the Wallabies and you're Josh Schmidt and you're thinking, oh no, Kitsy, it could be an easy time, just go watch that scrum against Ireland, that penalty try. And I assure you, it's definitely not going to be an easy way out when Steenekamp comes on.
Yeah, low key though, I'm quite keen to see the scrum battle because Australia's scrum is actually decent to good. Obviously, they've got excuse me, Taniela Tupou, who's obviously the size of a mansion. They're a tight edge. James Slipper's there. Alan Alatoa is also there. So there's they obviously dominated that wash scrum, and it'll be interesting to see. Maybe we might have. I mean, I don't think they're necessarily better than the Springboks, but it'll be interesting to see how far or how close they can get to that level. Because the 4 Southern Hemisphere teams when they played in their July series, they all had really strong scrums.
Yeah,
Anyway, let's move to the. Oh,
That's
go on, Kooks, yeah.
100%. I mean, it's something with the Wallabies that's also spoken up enough is their scrum, and that is still that Angus Bell who still is to come back. And I know we saw. I mean, it's the likes of Alex Hodgman, who I really love for the Wallabies, who got his chance is Isaac Kalia. He's a menace of in the loose, and his scrum has come a long way. I mean, the hits he was delivering against Wales was massive. So I think now they've got that depth, and obviously the All Blacks. I mean, at the end of the World Cup, they discovered 4 props, youngish props who can take them, take them forward in the Lomax, De Groot. I mean, Tamandi Williams, Fletcher Newell. So they also have very good props coming through. So the scrum battle come Rugby Championship. I mean, Argentina. I mean, their scrum is always formidable, but their scrum comes and goes. Actually, Argentina definitely either gets dominated or they are incredibly formidable in the scrum. I think it's like their motto from 1 to 23. To be honest with you,
what was the name of their scrum?
They used to have a name back in the day.
The Pajada, or something like that.
Yeah, what happened to that? Was that copyrighted to the props, particularly at the time, and they took it with them, went into retirement, or what?
They probably decided, like, you know what, we can't just be known for our scrum. We're actually going to start throwing the ball forward and push Thala off and put Carreras at 10. I think that's their focus now.
Fair enough. Let's move to lock, and good news for people that love, good line outs, which is that Ron Nokia has been selected for the Springboks. He's been Jason straight into the squad and probably has a very good chance of starting. He's been really leading the best line outs, one of the best line outs in the URC for a few years now, and we know his ability to contribute around the field. I mean, Shaun, we literally talked about this on Monday, so I mean, we're all in agreement about this selection.
Yeah, and Thala, hats off. You made that call. So it's...
To be fair, I've been making that call for about 3 years. So
blind squirrel, my man, you must claim it. It's Yeah, you're right. And like, as I always mention, I'm not like the sharpest when it comes to lineouts and scrums and all that sort of jazz, being a backline player. But it was like just realizing that the lineouts, so if our lineouts and our mauls are not what they used to be. And that's not necessarily just because of the locks. There's quite a few things happening, but it's quite clear that we need to secure that and sort it out. And Rowan Yakir is 100% the right guy for the job. I'm also loving that there are decisions made that we don't see coming. And we'll touch on one with Evan Roos a little later. Like I like that because it shows like the ability to change and evolve, and the guys are making decisions. And by no means saying that previously it wasn't the right decisions, because I'm obviously wrong with all the stuff we won. But it's interesting. Like I love that they've made a call. They're like, we're short here. This is what we've got to do. Perhaps it was the plan all along, and the guys and Nokia was sitting on the sidelines just waiting, and they needed to try things out a little bit versus Ireland and Portugal. But great one. I mean, it's crazy to think that we're missing Jean-Claude Lotiaga, Franco Mostert. Like that, those locks and sort of slash flankers like would cripple a side if you lose them. And like we are not doing badly at the moment.
Yeah. We can just see. I think there's a good chance that Nokia starts, and then you spread Etzebeth. You start with Etzebeth and Nokia at the start. You have Akia and Murad coming off the bench, so that you still have one of those big hitters on the field for the whole 80 minutes if you want to do a 6-2 or 7-1 type of bench.
Yes, actually, I'm with you on that. I hate. I've never really liked when guys are like, this guy player, the player X has to come off the bench. So Kwagga Smith's one of them. Everyone's like, no, he has to come off the bench because he's a better player. Like, I don't particularly like that and always subscribe to that. But I feel here at right now, perhaps just for the rugby championship and November, we can try a little bit more. He needs to come off the bench just as things stand. It would be, I think, a better shot, probably a little bit of a better balance for us, but it's also got a massive wow factor, which I quite like. And he clearly is pumped when he comes on to do all sorts of stuff. Like, we're so used to seeing those offloads and the way that he plays a little bit late in the game. Perhaps it's best suited to us later in the game. But I'm with you. I think Eben starts, Nokia starts. That would be first prize in my world.
Coach, do you like my nickname for him, Wonderboom Victor Matfield?
No, I love that nickname. I was going to call him the Sheen Victor Matfield, the one you order from Sheen, but I mean, that's still good quality. Not Victor, but I mean, but you are right, Tal. I think it makes perfect sense for him to go. Because I love what Jared said as well, that, you look at Ruben van Heerden, who is more like a 4.5. He came through as obviously as a number 4 lock, and now is transitioning to a number 5 lock, and he maybe does fit in the mold that Rassie does like his number 5 locks to be. If you look at like a Lotiaga and a Franco Mostert, but I think at the moment, if you don't have that, you rather have that experienced lineout caller in someone who's been running lineouts, the best lineout argument in the URC in Ron Nokia, and I think that's what the Springboks need now, especially if you're going to Australia in the Rugby Championship, where set piece is king. So, you can't look no further than Ron Nokia. And also, he's been in the mix. I mean, it's probably him and Marvin Orie fighting for a World Cup spot, and, Marvin Orie just edged ahead of him. So it's nice to see him back in the mix, even though he wasn't in the original squads for, this July test. And I'm glad that the coaches have said, listen, it's something that we need to look at as a line out. And yeah, who better than Wonderboom Victor Matfield?
Cooks, I'll come back to you. The big sort of call I think that was made is selecting Alchlo pretty much over Evan Roos, because I think the other loose forwards were in. Ben Jason Dixon obviously played himself in with the performance against Portugal, and it was pretty much between Roos and Lowe. Yeah, maybe you can. Yeah, why would a person do that? How do you console a Capetonian Evan Roos super fan about that?
Yeah, it's a tough one. To be honest with you, I thought they both would go. Actually, that was my initial sort of thinking. I had a feeling that maybe that we'll take Roos to cover 8, and then Low with with Peter Steff. I mean, there's talk saying he'll be available for Australia, but I thought with Peter Steff, having that niggle, having that injury, that you might actually have, and I'll just take Low as well as cover for blindside flank. But I think with Evan Roos, I think he may have been a casualty of maybe not having his strongest test against Portugal. I think with Eric Lowe, he had a great cameo off the bench, and we probably assumed that it was a battle between Jason Dixon and Eric Lowe for 7 years, not knowing that Eric Lowe was also at his eyes set at number 8. And we know he's played number 8 before for the Blue Bulls, and I think he does fit in that mold of how the Boks want their 8s to play, or Eric Lowe, and obviously he's a fantastic line-out option. So it is tough one. It is tough for Russ, and I think it's something that I'm sure that they're going to give him indicators to go work on. Give him things that he's going to go, work on when he gets back to the Stormers. Maybe perhaps his ball carrying. And I think it's something that it's hard for him to take. I'm sure it will be, because I really thought that he would be going to the Rugby Championship, and he'll be especially in Australia. But if you're a Capetonian and a Roos fan, it is tough, and I'm sure for Evan Roos it is tough. But I definitely don't think it's the end of the road for him. I think it's obviously there's a few things he's been told to go work on, which he will, and I know he'll bounce back. I mean, the talent is there, and we all know that. And but I just think at the moment the race for these Lucy positions is as tight as it's ever been, and if one, I would say, not even one okay performance versus some guy who has a great performance, there might be enough to not see you make the squad. I mean, look what's happened to Trevor Nyagane, for example. So this is not the year to sort of struggle. This is the year, like, if you don't put your hand up, it becomes tough, because you easily find someone else who's hungry. And we have, I mean, Eric Lowe arguably was one of the forwards of the tournament in the URC. So I'm glad that he's getting his chance, and it's going to be interesting to see how he goes at 8. I mean, I saw Angus, the analyst, talking about possibly Peter Steff playing 8, and but I think the options are plenty there, and I do think that Eric Lowe's line-out work. I'm not saying that Roos is not a great line-out jumper. I think that does also edge him ahead of Roos.
It's interesting, and like you say, that you thought both would go. I'll be honest with you, I didn't see us naming a squad without Evan Roos. Like, I'm not his biggest fan. I'm quick to point out where I think that he's falling short, but he's had a reasonably good season. Like, he does tend to bounce back quite well. And if anything, like, the lack of Jasper Visser against Ireland has probably shown, but that wasn't like Evan Roos's fault. It's very, very interesting. But I think the two things that I want to say is the Portugal game was a game that you would expect, like, top Springboks to really step it up. Like Ala Lucanio, like Evan Roos, you would have expected him to have a better game. Dixon stepped up. Like, that's what happened. Like, in those kind of games, like the real cream does rise to the top. And if not, like, perhaps he just wasn't in the mix for it for some reason. The other thing is potentially he has the potential. I think he's the one that could kind of be motivated by this as well. I know he's been dropped a couple times and like but I think this is also a massive motivating factor for him. So if he gets another look in, like, say, against the All Blacks or against Argentina, I expect that he's going to put in a performance that everyone would be like, see, we told you. That's kind of what I do see happening.
Yeah, I think actually you can say the same for Lowe as well. Obviously, they both, Roos and Lowe, started becoming like prominent in options in 2022, and there's a rugby team trying to prepare for a Rugby World Cup, so there weren't too many opportunities, but both haven't really got too many minutes or starts against good opposition and playing essentially with the first team. And yeah, I think that would also be a good indicator. As you said, Shaun, someone should shine in a game like the Portugal game for sure. But also playing against, Australia away or New Zealand over 2 tests, that's a good indicator too, and to see how you combine
Mm,
with the first team. So yeah,
mm.
that's where it'll be interesting to see, because I mean we know how big the queue is of loose forwards that are not even in the squad, and we know the likes of Cam Hanekom are lurking in the shadows. So yeah, I mean, good luck to Rassi for that. Genuinely, I don't know how you make decisions about that and who
But
you give the
Ulrich
chance
Loh,
to, who's in, who's
I'll,
out, because there'll be I was just going to say, Sean, there's going to be always a disappointed player or disappointed sort of section of the fan
yeah,
base, because there's a lot of players that are playing well.
yeah, and the thing is I didn't expect Lowe to go through because he's like the only 8 we have in that squad. Like, but the thing is like he's an out and out 8, but he covers blind. I thought we would see more of him on the side of the scrum than at 8, and obviously him covering 4, 7, and 8 is massive. That's also that really puts things in his favor when you're umming and ahhing and going back to the locks and the flanks that we're missing, that's probably where Low edged Ruiz. I don't necessarily think it was the Portuguese performance. I think the Portuguese performance made that decision a little bit easier. But Ulrich Low is probably more there because of the lack of locks and blindside flanks that we currently have. And obviously not Vissa not being there. Like Vissa and Ruiz are completely different, and Low fits the Vissa mold a little bit better.
Yeah. No, and again, shouting out um, Angus. He has a great article about all of these, like, South African loose forward options, where they fit in, what their skill sets are, like who they, yeah, like where, how possibly do the Springbok coaches see them as. And for example, with Low, like you said, Sean, you probably see maybe more than 8 than a 7, and that can also help to explain the decision of picking him. And yeah, like Cook said, there's a few options you can go for who starts at 8. I mean, obviously Kwagga, he was one that played in the Island series. You can play Eric Lowe at 8. You can play maybe Peter Stephen, Ben Jason Dixon at 7 and 8. Yeah, I'd be keen to see if I personally want to see Lowe there, just to see how he goes against a top
Mm.
opponent. And yeah, we can sort of learn from there basically. But yeah, that's a conversation for 2 weeks time. Let's go to the back line. And yeah, I think the news there is, first of all, Faf de Klerk being injured. And Cooks, yeah, it's going to be interesting because there's the very experienced Kobus Reinach. There's, the breakthrough player from last year, Grant Williams, and Mone van der Berg is the breakthrough player for this year. So yeah, we're kind of getting into the depth of our scrum off ranks now, because there's no Faf, there's no Jaden Hendrickse. I don't know if it is an open and shut case that Grant Williams would be the one starting. I think the coaches probably lean towards Kobus Reinach.
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's open and shut case with Grant Williams starting. I mean, I would love to see him getting a start in one of the 2 tests, but we've seen the coaches, go to Kobus Reinach when there's a shot, when a Faf or Jen Henderson goes down and Kobus goes to start, and he is the experienced campaigner. And, I think having the full safe of a Kobus Reinach, that shows where our depth is. And, I think losing Faf de Klerk, we still have that sort of impact with the Mone van der Berg. So I think that is the great thing, and the way that our 9s have been sort of structured in their depth is we sort of have 9s that can sort of cover themselves. So like if you don't have a Kobus Reinach, you got a Grant Williams. But I think with Grant Williams, we saw his breakout party in the second half against Ireland, where you could see how far his kicking game has come in his distribution. So I do think those 2 will battle out for that jersey, the starting jersey, because I also think that Kobus Reinach is also fantastic off the bench as well. We've seen the work he's done off the bench, and the pace that he has, can also cover on the wing. So I still, especially in the 6-2 Thala, I definitely do think I would probably go with Kobus Reinach to start in the 6-2, and then having Grant Williams there as wing cover as well. So that's why I don't think it's an open and shut case. But again, like I said, I would love to see Grant Williams getting a start in either test or even in one, because it looks like, obviously, I mean, like I said, it is a squad for the Rugby Championship. So maybe Faf's injury is quite serious, where we don't see him at all for the Rugby Championship. So, and I definitely think Morne van den Berg is getting a run, whether it could be against Argentina or if maybe there's another injury. So I do think that it is interesting to lose Faf, and I think it is a big loss. My worry is, with all these injuries, I mean, eventually we have all this depth, but it can catch up to you, because you might be going to a test without a Malcolm Marx, a Peter Steph du Toit, a Faf de Klerk. That's big experience not to have. I mean, again, Uncle Mostert, Lord Diaga, it's a big experience that we're losing here. It's a good amount of test caps that we are losing there, and yes, we can be excited about the depth that we have, but it is tough to just to lose all that experience. So depending on who is available, that's why for me, like a Kobus Reinach makes sense to start. He's been there, started, big games, started pool, World Cup semi-finals, quarterfinals. So that's why I think for me, I'll probably have Kobus starting at 9, just depending on what other senior players are available and which other senior players we're losing through injury.
Shaun, do you think any differently?
No, I just want to add to it. So initially, Morne van den Berg was like, so he was tainted. Oh, Ringo's going to hate me for this. He was tainted by the Lions Rugby Union for me. Like, I thought he was good, but I was like, cool, he's good with them and they're okay, if you understand what I'm saying. Sorry, Ringo. I'm sorry, I was wrong. So then hearing, I think it was someone in our group was saying that that big things will come from him and he's highly rated. Because I would initially look at that and just go, Reinach and Williams are playing, they will play every test if there's no other options, the two of them. Kooks, you make a great point in terms of starting and bench. Like, I think we all want to see Williams start, but we all as fans need to understand that a starting Williams is different to a bench Williams. The role is different. Like, how often you're like, when everyone's like, they see the scrum off who came off the bench, he played differently. He didn't kick the ball, he ran it. Like, those are game plans. Like, you start that 9 the next week, he will do the kicking. That's just the way that it's set up. But you've nailed it. Like, his all-round game, his kicking game, kicking both feet is wild. I can barely just walk on both my feet, let alone kick with both of them. Like, it's crazy, and it's impressive. But how's it gonna unfold? I don't know. The other thing, and something that I brought up I think it was in the World Cup, is Reinach and Williams are almost two of the same 9s. Like, does Morne van den Berg get a better look in because he's a different style 9? Like, there's that. But yeah, like, you guys play in a game plan because that's just the nature of the beast, but they all have their own attributes that they are good at. They all see things differently, like spot a gap. Like Morne van den Berg and Reinach are looking for a gap perhaps around the ruck. Grant Williams is looking for a gap between 10 and 12 because he's got so much gas. So it's like there's that. But I'm loving the 9s that we're taking. The biggest one for me is I'm interested to see how Reinach is deployed. That's the one for me. Like, whether he starts or benches, that's the one which I'm the most interested in, because of the role he's played for the Springboks in the past.
Okay, then we move to the fly halves. I think that's been the position that's garnered the most news and headlines about, 3 playoffs, what's going to be done, and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure why, though, and maybe Kooks and Shaun are missing something, because I think it's pretty obvious what the situation is. It's sort of back to what the Springboks were doing in the previous World Cup cycle, where Pollard is the first choice, Alton Yankees is the second choice. He comes in and plays as the first choice, but he won't be on the bench in the match day 23 because he can only cover one position, although Lebok can cover, fullback as well, but not as much as what Sasha can cover. And then Sasha's with Damien Willems, a third option that will probably get more game time, will play in the 23, is probably going to start a few games, but yeah, he plays more minutes. But if Pollard gets sick the night before, it's probably Lebok that starts that game.
Yeah, I think so as well, Thala. I think it's it's probably the one position where everything sort of has gone as normal, and I think that's the case. I think you hit the nail on the head. I still think that Marnie is our second choice 10, and I still back him as our second choice 10. And with Sasha there, he knows that he will cover the 6-2 split. And and what Sasha's done is there'll be games where if Andre Pollard, for example, may say not having his best game, or we are maybe looking at changing the way we play, maybe speeding up tempo, is having a Sasha coming on in the 63rd minute, 60th minute, as opposed to maybe him initially coming on, maybe if he comes on at 10 in the 70th minute. So I think that's where Sasha's played himself into. That is, the Springboks will sort of back him to come on at 10 quite early if they feel like that's where they need to sort of, if Andre is not having his best game, or maybe they're trying to switch things up. But I just feel like if Andre is not starting at all, I think Marnie is there. I think that you can still have the luxury of having Sasha on the bench to cover a 15-12, and obviously with Grant Williams or Kobus covering on the wing. So I think it's our 10 position. I think it's as great as it can be, and I think it does sort of answer its own questions there about possibly Marnie still being second choice and Sasha covering the 6-2. What do you think?
Are we definitely going with a 6-2? I definitely want to chat about the bench later on, because I don't know. Anyway, it's a confusing space, and the 10s that you pick to start and bench in a, let's say, a 5-3 are purely based on your liking of a player or not. Like a 6-2, we all know Manny's not going to play on a 6-2 bench. He'll play in the game as a starting fly-off, or he won't play at all. And like, it's so interesting, and I'd love to see how it goes. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Kooks. Manny's our second choice. I think he's got a lot of value still to add. I think he's probably going to be the one that'll unlock our backline easier. I think it'll be work for 100 to unlock it as comfortable as Manny will do it, and Sasha, it'll be work for him just because of his inexperience and how he'll fit into the mix. And I also do believe that Sasha will be training and playing in multiple positions where Handra and Manny are not. But super exciting. It's a kind of fly halves that if Handra Pollard is not named as the starting fly half, everyone will be like, whoa, hang on, what's going on? And then the creative juices start flowing as to what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, what's the plan. Like, will Handra be on the bench in a 6-2? Unlikely. I think he fits into the same category as Manny, unless they change it up totally, but it'll be fun.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Sasha covering multiple positions, it's an interesting call made by the box squad with impending suspension on Andre Edstasien. He's been now suspended basically up until the second test of the Australian tour. They've only gone for three primary midfielders. So it's David Dialendi, Lukhanyo Am, and Jesse Creel, and probably Sasha covering 12 if anything happens to Damien. But I wouldn't be too surprised if Am and Creel combine at centre rather than putting Sasha at 12. There wasn't like a Ethan Hooker or someone like that was selected in their place. Shaun, I guess the only question here is what happens if Damien Dialendi is unfit or whatever the case is. But yeah, I don't think there's too many things that can be said, and Edstasien is probably on that first flight to Australia if anything happens to Damien.
Yeah, so he'll be available for the second test. The idea of Lukhanyo Am at 12 and Jesse Creel at 13 is quite something. I know that Lukhanyo Am can play 12. He's played it for the Sharks, and I know he was alternating between 12 and 13 for the Boks against Portugal. I I don't think they start at 12. And I'm really just taking an absolute guess there. But again, like, I'm relatively conservative with how things are going and what's been done. But like, if I take a step back and think about Lukhanyo and Jesse Creel as a midfield, I think that is freaking exciting. Like, they would alternate a lot. I think Crew would play a lot of ball at 12 and freeing up to be at 13. Like, it would chop and change. It would be the numberless backline that Eddie Jones is after. I think that would happen. But it's very interesting. On your point of if Damien Delendi is unable to play, it's a tough one. Like, would they put Sasha at 12 or would they put Pollard at 12? Those are the two options we have. And this is for the opening test. If we pick up an injury in the captain's run, like, it would be very, very interesting and exciting as hell.
I think it also shows the direction the Boks are going with their centres. I mean, obviously, we saw test matches where Damien Delendi passed more than he carried. And for them to go without another, say, an Ethan Hooker, for example, it just shows maybe that if they don't have Delendi, the type of centre they want is a Lukhanyo Amos, Sasha Ngomazulu type as another playmaker in there. And we've seen, obviously, Sasha playing 12 for the Stormers and playing in that role. And I think with obviously, he stepped in there against Portugal, and we know his distribution skills, and he came through as a 12 as well. So I just think it says more about the direction the Springboks are going with their 12s. And yes, they want their 12s to have the ability to carry, but they also want their 12s to play and their 12s to be an extra playmaker, which you're seeing now with Delendi, and I think with Sasha and Lukhanyo, I think those are some of our best playmakers as well.
I have a question. If Andre Esterhuizen was fit and not banned, where would he go? Like, would he be in the squad? I would say probably yes, but for the sake of this argument, let's say that he comes into the squad. Who drops out? Like, that is huge. Does he just straight up take the place of Lukhanyo? I don't think so. I think what he will do is we will go with 4 midfielders, and someone like maybe Apelele Fassi or Willie Leroux will lose out, and Sasha will cover the 10 and the 15 role. But I'm interested to hear what you think, Thala, and then Cook.
Yeah, I think he'd just be added on. I mean, there's no numbers limits with a squad for these competitions. So
that is such a boring answer. I'm disappointed. I am so disappointed in you.
Cooks, you can come with a more exciting answer.
Okay, I was going to go with that one. I think maybe like someone like a someone like Apelele Fassi misses out, and I think if it weren't for the ban, I think Esterhuizen goes already. I think with Esterhuizen, his playmaking has improved a shit ton, especially at Harlequins, and since 2020 at the last season, the Sharks, when him and Amo absolutely balling, goes to the Harlequins, his playmaking has come leaps and bounds. I mean, there's times at the Harlequins he was covering at 10 and playing 10. I mean, we know that he can pass the ball around.
And a massive boot.
And a massive boot, and he's no longer just a one-string pony. So I think if it weren't for the ban, he does go regardless, and maybe a Apelele Fassi misses out. So, because, I mean, you think about it, you can still have Sasha at 15. You can... our dream, maybe throwing a Colby at 15. Kirtley has played 15 as well. So 15, there would have been enough cover at 15, but they're thinking we're going to actually focus in and maybe tell Sasha, you're not actually covering midfield at all because of Esterhuizen being there. So I think now without Esterhuizen, Sasha falls into covering, being probably the second choice inside centre in that position now without Andre Esterhuizen. But I do think he'd have gone regardless if he wasn't banned.
Yeah, I mean, the point that you make there, and we can then introduce the back three here, is I think there's an interesting variance for Apelele.
Wait, Thala, quickly. I want to raise another point, which has been talking about 12s, which hasn't been discussed in the longest time in South African rugby. Hey, what if we maybe get Marnie and Andre Pollard covering a 12? It's been a while since we've gone down the Pollard 12 realms, but I mean, we've seen it before.
That died, eh? It died quickly.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying we've seen it. I mean, Pollard is not a small boy. I'm just saying, 2018, we saw Yankees playing at 10 and Andre going to 12. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. It would be interesting. Like having Manny. I mean, we might as well have Manny at 10, Handre at 12, and Sasha at 15. We might as well just put all our 10s on at the same time. Like, this is basically 38 Scrum Halves Rugby World Cup 2023 reboot. 2.0, all our 10s on in the same time.
Yeah, this isn't John Dobson coaching the team. You don't see 3 ballers like that.
He was forced into that, eh? I
Leave
will
that to
never...
London.
I don't know why I'm so hung up on that, but he just never played Libok. Who was it? Libok, Willemse, and
Geland.
He never played them together, and there was an injury that forced it, and then that was it. Then they went on to win the URC.
We had to bully him into making that decision. Yes. It was such a difficult thing because he was, I mean, at that time, Dan du Plessis wasn't in the form that he is in now, and he was just constantly going with them, and I'm like,
yeah. And they cooked the second they were on the field together, they were cooking as well. It's not like it took a game to get used to it.
Not at all. Yeah, I was going to say in the back three, and I guess a question that I have for you guys is there's an interesting variant with Apelele Fassi. Like, he can, I mean, we just talked about he might have been the one dropped if maybe there was space needed for Andre Esthuizen, but I personally think there's a, if Villiers Leroux doesn't start on a few Saturdays from now, there's a good chance that he can start in order to keep Sasha Mgomezulu as the player 23, and you can give Fassi a chance to play fullback if Villiers Leroux is also out. So I am quite interested to see how Leroux is handled, and I wouldn't mind how Fassi is handled. And I wouldn't mind if Leroux is given at least an extra week off just to see, like, basically it's going to be, again, a good opportunity and an opportunity for him to play at the first choice side and for us to see whether he's got it or not. What do you think, Shaun?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm kind of the thought that they want Fassi and Sasha on the bench, so like a little bit less pressure for them to get back in the groove. But Fassi's role doesn't allow for him to be on the bench. Like, he doesn't add enough for him to be on the bench, so he'll have to start. And if we're honest, he's done enough to start. I don't see why that's not a massive option at the moment. And just because of Villy. The thing is Villy, like in the URC final where he was out there kicking the ball like he was warming up with the team to play, like, he gets grumpy when he can't play. But Villy hasn't had a chance to really let go in this new setup. Like, he's still got to get ready and get into it. And I think that he's going to be fighting hard to do it. But if he's not available, Fassi has to start. And I think Sasha must ride the pine and come on. Like, because he's going to be covering multiple positions, the opportunity to bring him on in the back line at any given time is there, because, you can always move someone to the wing and put him on wherever you feel fit. But I'd love to know what the actual plan is for him, because I still really do believe that the plan for him right now is 10, is just to sit and do in a perfect world, like, without having to come on for whatever reason is his reason. His space would be just to play 10, just play 10, do 10, master it, become very comfortable with it, and then either they'll keep him there or they'll move him around.
And Kooks, just updating on players that are injured or suspended. We've mentioned a few of them. Excuse me. So we have in the locks, we have Jean Klein, Leo Diach, and Franco Mostert. With props, we have Steven Kitsoff. At eighth man, we have Jasper Wiese, who's obviously suspended. At scrum half, it's Faf de Klerk and Jaden Hendrikse. And Herschel Yankees was added, which was a bit random and a bit interesting because, I didn't think he was in the Bok reckoning at all. Do you think Rassie has a problem with breaking up with people?
Maybe just throwing all Herschel Yankees in the mix. You never know. Just letting the scrum halves know, hey, don't forget about my special player from 2018. I still have all the love in the world for him. So like, sometimes you got to keep your exes there to make just you're checking up on them. Check up on the Instagram, looking into their stories, seeing if they're well, if they're doing well. So maybe that's what Rassi is doing, just making sure. Like I'd like to add him in the squad mix, and I like seeing his name involved when I'm picking my squads.
Yeah, this is giving strong. No, we're still friends. We're just talking, and then something more is happening. Andre stays in the midfield, obviously suspended, and then Kanan Moody and the very unlucky Edel van der Merwe, who probably would have gotten at least another test, are also injured. So we'll probably see some of these players come back. Most probably someone like Moody and Kitsov, maybe De Klerk as well. And obviously the suspended players like Jasper Wies and Andre Stays. Gents, maybe I'll sort of, and if there's other things we can discuss there, but I'll leave you with this. Cook's the one player you want to see in either of the two tests against Australia or both the two tests against Australia is who?
I would love to see Eric Lowe having a start at 8. I think I was caught between him and Ben Jason Dixon, but I thought that's Sharky's player. So I'd love to see Eric Lowe getting a start at 8. I mean, I think he's been fantastic all season. So I would love for him to sort of get rewarded for that form by having a start. And I think, you know, yes, he's such a great player, and I think he looks like a guy who will get over 50 caps as well. So I do think maybe you never know. This could be a coming out party for him in a Springbok jersey at eighth man, where he maybe solidifies that 8 jersey for himself. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Eric Lowe, and I'd love to see him getting a start at 8 in one of those tests.
Maybe I'm a bad Bulls fan, but when did we start calling him the Sheriff?
I don't know. I just saw him coming back as a sheriff, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with him because the work he does. I'm like, you know what? If you're the sheriff, and I feel like maybe just one day just rocked up and just grabbed the badge. It's like, guys, no, there's no sheriff here in rugby, so I'm just gonna calling myself the sheriff with Ken Owens probably halfway through retirement. It's like, well, Ken Owens is the sheriff in Wales. I'll be the sheriff. Yeah.
Remember that his break. So go on, Sean.
No, my man, you go.
I was going to say, remember that his moment that he introduced himself to the rugby world was absolutely monstering Dwayne Vermeulen in practice, and we just heard from the Bull social media that Dwayne Vermeulen just absolutely got like bullied basically by Eric Lowe. So yeah, maybe he is the real sheriff in town.
Yeah, it is interesting. I have no clue. I'm gonna break from the norm. So Ben Jason Dixon is starting, so that's happen. So this is my thing. A person I want to see play one or both of the games, but it won't be both, but is Lukhanyo. So I messaged on the group that I think the Portuguese game where people will realize that Lukhanyo is either coming back or not coming back. Like I thought that this was a little bit too much. Like the injury comeback and everything was a bit too much for I thought he'd struggle a little bit. It's clear that he didn't. I don't think he's got the pace that he used to have. But unfortunately, the bad side of this is South African fans are either or. Like they think that the guys are throwing punches at each other in practice to get that 13 jumper, that they're not buddies and feel like all working in the same direction. It's bizarre. Like it's like hate support sometimes, especially at 13. But I'd like to see Lukhanyo back at test level against the Wallabies. I'd like to see what he has to offer and bring out again. And I imagine moving forward for the next 3-ish years. I don't know exactly on the age profile, but the next 3 years having Lukhanyo and Jesse Creel both on form, being moved around, doing different things, rested here and there, I think it would be absolutely incredible. It would take a massive load off the Springbok backline on attack and defense, and it would allow a player like Moody or whoever else we'd like to earmark for 13 to come in under more controlled circumstances. So Lukhanyo's the one for me.
Yeah, I mean, both are, well, JC Curls is 30 and Amos 29, so they can definitely play for another 4 years at the very least. That'll be interesting. I mean, I think that's Creel's jersey. It's
Yeah.
He has to Has to wait basically for what has happened before in 2019 when Krill got injured. Then took it for a few years, and then what happened in 2023 to himself when he got injured. And Krill took the jersey back. So yeah, they have a long term lease on that 13 jersey.
Oh, imagine having, because when they're both on form, they are arguably the best 13s in the world. I think Gelfick is probably the only test player that can really put his hand up. But sorry, you're breaking up there, my man. It's like having and Creel in form would be childish. Like we went through a long period where we had the two best hookers in the world. Now we potentially have the two best 13s in the world. It's flipping incredible.
My player is Apelele Fassi. I think just as I
Nice.
mentioned just before, I would love for him to get at least one test. And I mean, I think it'll be a good test for him because, we're probably going to have one of Dalgunu or Korobete starting. So there's a good chance that he has to now have, like, protect himself in the air as well and be safe because you never know with those two and how they go into the air. But on a serious note, yeah, I think there'll be probably a lot more pressure on him than there would have been in the Wales and the Portugal test. It won't be like uncontested kicks that he's receiving and he's running back. It'll be, some of the stuff that we can now see. Okay, is he at test level? Is he back? And we know that with his pace and his finishing ability, he can also play at 11. So I wouldn't mind seeing Fassi at fullback with obviously our two first choice wings. And then, yeah, we can make a judgment call from there as to whether Fassi is the guy. Is he ready? Is he not ready? Are we good if Vili, retires or fades off form, or should we look at other options? I mean, I think a lot of podcast time has been spent by us looking at all those 15 options that we had earlier this year. So Fassi has the ball now. He's had an opportunity with Leroux and Willemse being out. So I would love to see him play at 15. And then if all goes badly, then obviously we have Leroux there. We have Sasha that can also deputize. So I would love Fassi to get that first test in Brisbane. Shaun, you said you had a point about the bench you wanted to make?
The bench. Oh, yes, sure. You almost blindsided me there. What? Are we guaranteed to go 6-2? Are we just so used to 6-2 that it's just going to be the norm? Like, do we ever see a 7-1 again? But I'm going to say that this year, we will probably see more 5-3s this year than we used to. I feel that's how things are going to unfold this year. But yeah, that was just all I really wanted to chat about. Like, is it a dead certain that we're doing 6-2s?
Yeah, I think the 6-2 thing also only works. I mean, basically how the Boks have been playing this is they only would go 5-3 if the form of the backline players necessitates playing 10, 10 backline players in the team. So obviously you have to have a scrum off, so there's always going to be two scrum offs there. And, Sasha's obviously cooking, so he's probably there. So it's basically a matter of is one of either Lucanio Am or Apelele Fassi or Andre Easthuizen or someone that can cover multiple positions. Can they, or Mani Libok, obviously, of course, can they put themselves into that conversation and say, look, our form is too good to ignore. We need to be put on the bench instead of having, a Marco van Staden or maybe a Ben Jason Dixon when Peter Steph Toy comes back, or having two locks on the bench. So I think that's the first indicator. And the second thing is with the Boks sort of almost scraping the ball with their lock choices. Yeah, there's a good possibility that Rassi probably doesn't put one of Murat or Nokia in the 23. So that already takes away from a 6-2 possibility. And yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised especially if Peter Steph Dutoy is not fit. So you have Ben Jason Dixon starting, maybe if Aruchlo on the bench and he's switching with Kwaka. Does he need a second loose forward then? Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see because now, as we've talked about, there's a lot of gaps in depth that's on the sidelines. So it's not an easy call, and yeah, might be a bit of horses for courses, but I think it's about if Rassi and the select, well, Rassi is the selector, I guess. If he thinks the form of and Sasha was enough to justify putting three backs, then he puts three backs on the bench. Yeah, so it'll be interesting. And Cooks, I mean, obviously we'll only know about this, like what the team is, in about 2 weeks. Um, it'll also be interesting. We're going to probably hear the other squads over the course of the next few days as well. Um, is there maybe one Aussie player that you're looking forward to him matching up against the Box?
I think the big one for me is whenever you play the Wallabies, I think it's I always love seeing Rob Valentini go up against our loose trio. I think he's bordering on world class. I mean, I think he's fantastic. So I always enjoy the battle of Rob Valentini against versus our loose trio. But for me, it's going to be Will Skelton to be because of it looks like he will be the guy picked, and I think the way they more got decimated by the Welsh, I think this becomes a massive, massive 2 games for Will Skelton, and I will say it, I'll just to protect Thala that he hasn't lived up to the hype properly at Wallaby Test level. I think we know that he's a fantastic player, but I mean, I'm saying like, we've seen the levels he's played at for La Rochelle. I
Did
don't
you
think
say he's a plastic player?
I'm not using the word transparent,
Please.
but I just feel like for the Wallabies to really step down a performance against Springbok, I think Will Skelton is going to have to be absolutely colossal for them, and I think he has a chance to be. So I think Will Skelton is a player I'm really looking forward to see, and then obviously I'm always looking forward to seeing Rob Valentini. And for Lukhanyo Am's sake, I hope Len Igatau is not playing because Len Igatau seems to always cook whenever he sees Lukhanyo Am in front of him.
True story, eh? So I'm very keen to see Wright. So Tom Wright has been like when he broke into Test rugby was so. He seems to have found himself, and I'm very interested to see how he goes. The other one is I definitely want to see Korobeti and Mapimpi have another go at each other. That's going to require some fortune, but I think it would. Oh, love Nick White. Love him. But I think Mapimpi and Korobeti up against each other is what's going to sell all the tickets. But, we just need them to be named in the squad. But Tom Wright at 15 is the one for me that I'm interested to see how we manage.
Yeah. I think you've nailed it. And Cook said it, Ronan O'Gara. I didn't say it. And to all the people that always put Will Skelton as the best lock in the world, even though he's done absolutely nothing in international level. But that's fine. You only watch Champions Cup games and all that sort of stuff. You guys are casuals. Anyway, let us end this podcast here. Thank you so much for listening to the Rugby Bits podcast. Please follow us on our social media channels to see any updates that happen in Rugby World. We literally have the Olympics playing as we're recording as well. And then please follow us on social media channels. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast and whatever your preferred podcast platform is. We'll see you next week. And yeah, I think probably we'll do a podcast that will wrap up the Olympics. So yeah, we'll see you next week to talk about that. Bye-bye.
Bye.